I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later.
I stand for mayhem!
I know a lot of fucking idiots that think a lot of shit is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe.
But the relief of comedy is it take things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Why You Laughing? Not from the Vaulted Podcast Studios today, but we're in the Oconee Dome, and I'm pleased to introduce you to you, the late, great Gilbert Gottfried, as always. Like I said, we were in Craig's studio, where he keeps it a cozy 98 degrees in here.
It's really hot.
Jesus Christ.
It's really, really hot. I mean, in this thing, and I don't have, it's not zoned by itself.
I would say stifling.
Yeah. If I lost a little weight, I would just take off this hoodie, but I'm too embarrassed. You people will shame me if you watch on the YouTube.
Well, if you keep it on, you will lose weight.
And to see that, go to the YouTube channel if you like. Subscribe. Get those numbers up, baby. You can get episodes a week early on patreon.com/blindmike, as well as the Blind Mike Project, More on Money, all the wacky stuff we do back there. So support that if you like the program. And then let's get into it. Matt not here, but Craig and Mike are. It's been a while, boys. How are we?
I'm great.
I'm good too.
So very sad to hear. We're just covering dead comedians every 3 weeks.
I know.
We're on a heater of dead guys.
I was really sad that Gilbert Gottfried died.
Yeah.
A little more. He wasn't much older than Norm, but I did see him at Skankfest a couple times in Houston in November, and then even a couple years ago. And I remember Alba saying to me that he was like, he didn't look great in the sense, like, on stage, you would kind of like shake a little bit. Like, he didn't look well necessarily. But I didn't know he was sick. Like, he kind of pulled the Norm and just said, and it's perfect for his character too, where I don't think he wanted people thinking of him as the sick guy. Like, it doesn't really work for his act. So I don't think he wanted to be thought of that way. And I think it's pretty admirable the way those guys handle that, because I would be flailing my arms looking for all kinds of attention. So a lot of respect for the great Gilbert Gottfried. And he's a guy that I feel probably didn't get enough credit, even by me, who's a Gilbert fan, where, like, shame on me for last week when we were talking about Mitch Hedberg. I always mean to bring up Gilbert Gottfried, where I talk about Mitch Hedberg and Stephen Wright and guys like that influencing, Anthony Jeselnik and Mark Normand and some of these guys. And shame on me for not throwing Gilbert in there, because he definitely belongs in that kind of discussion of just like pure joke writers. Like, he's one of the greatest, honestly.
Absolutely, I agree. And
he's one of the best at just being filthy in a way. And I think we mentioned this in the Saget episode, where Saget obviously has this because he's known for being on Full House more than his comedy.
Right.
But Norm had it to an extent, and Gilbert certainly did as well, where they can be completely filthy, and yet also appeal to like a mainstream audience or do kids stuff. Yeah. And I think that's a dying breed. I don't think you'll ever see that again. You'll never again have a guy telling the Aristocrats joke who is also in a children's cartoon.
You're right. I didn't know. So my daughter was watching this today, actually this morning. She's watching Thumbelina, which is another Disney movie that Gilbert's in. Right. I did not know that.
I mean, he just had, it's almost, what? I almost wonder if his voice hurt him with voiceover work, in the sense that it was so like iconic, where he could never be in a role where you're not like, oh, that's Gilbert Gottfried, So he had the greatest voice, one of the greatest laughs ever. Like, just his, I know, speaking of having Carl on last week, our boys at Who Are These Podcasts, like a lot of podcasts and radio shows would use Gilbert's laugh as like a sound drop. Mm-hmm. It's one of the greatest ever. Yeah. So I would say one of the things people know him most for is being one of the greatest guests ever on the Howard Stern show. Mm-hmm. I think Howard said he was on like 122 times or something like that.
Jesus.
And then 0 in the last 12 years.
Ignore he exists.
Yeah, I don't want to get into we'll do a Howard episode at some point where we can get into all the hypocrisy and everything there. But Howard did at least acknowledge that Gilbert died in a very weird way, where he didn't say like, hey, I should have had this guy in at some point in the last decade. But he was one of the great guests ever. I didn't pull a ton of Stern stuff, but I did at least a couple, because you figure you have to. I figure enough people when he died probably played a lot of Stern clips and everything. But the one thing that stood out to me that I always loved that Gilbert did, and I think he was one of the first guys. So this episode of Stern was like when they moved, the period of time that it was in was when they moved Seinfeld to follow Cheers. So Seinfeld's like just started to take off.
Right.
So that makes me think, I don't have, any evidence to back this up. I couldn't find a literal, archive of who was the first Seinfeld impression. But I think Gilbert might have been the guy that kind of launched who are these people? Like the Seinfeld impression that we all do when we're talking about Seinfeld. Yeah. I think Gilbert, he was certainly one of the first, if not the first guy to do that. So this is him on Stern. They're calling Seinfeld. I think Seinfeld was supposed to do the show and cancel last minute or something. So Howard's calling him live on the air.
I'll call you right back. Thanks. Hey, Jerry, it's Howard Stern. You're supposed to be on the air with us. Certain things like this are just not right. You say, what type of a person are you that you say you're going to be on the air, and then you're not? Who are these people?
We have Jerry Seinfeld Jr. here, just because you're not here. Jerry Seinfeld Jr.
Well, it happened years ago. You see, my father was used to travel, and he would have sex with these waitresses.
Right.
Now, one of them he had sex with, and then he left.
I see.
Now, she got pregnant, and he left town, and then I was born.
No, you flew in from Los Angeles, is that right?
That's true.
How are those airplanes?
These airplanes are crazy. First of all, they give you those peanuts. Who wants those peanuts? I want to know, how do you open those little packets of peanuts on a plane? And why do stewardesses give you those pillows? Those are not comfortable.
You know what's happening, Jerry? You're getting too big for your britches.
As we've put it on this show before, that's probably Seinfeld's actual act that he's quoting there.
You're not wrong.
but I just love that so much, and I think Gilbert was one of the first guys. But my other takeaway from that clip was so that's if I let it go in its entirety, I think it would be like a 45-minute chunk of Gilbert just doing Seinfeld. And there's no evidence that they ever hung up on his voicemail, I don't think. Like, they may have just left him a 40-minute message. But Gilbert was one of the best. And when we talked about Saget, I used this word, but I couldn't. I wanted to use this word. I made this point, but I couldn't define it the way I wanted to. And I thought Jim Norton, when they were talking about Gilbert passing, put it perfectly, where he said Gilbert thrives in redundancy, which I think was that's the word I was looking for. Where Gilbert was one of the best ever at just dragging a bit out. Yeah. And I said Saget was always good at playing along with that, Norm for sure. And I think the two best were probably Artie and Gilbert, where they could do a bit for 45 minutes and it goes through that phase where it's like, it's funny, then it's getting a little old, then it's not funny, then it's funny again. That's funny. Gilbert was the fucking best at that of all time, I think.
Like the Saget roast.
Yeah.
He just kept going and going and going.
Yeah. So, since you mentioned that, I have two major complaints for the internet. They say you can find anything on that interweb. And I challenge that, because the two things you cannot find are clean versions of Gilbert at the Saget roast and Gilbert's 9/11 joke. So I didn't include those because the 9/11 joke, there's like this sad music in the background. Like, can you believe he said it? We'll get to that a little later. And the Saget roast, it's all like chopped up in this weird manner. Like you'd have to find the full roast to get it in its entirety, apparently. And God knows Viacom will take us down if we do that
every time.
So we don't have that for you. But I mean, definitely go back and watch the Bob Saget roast. The more we talk about dead guys, we had Geraldo, Saget, Norm, and Gilbert all gone from that roast.
Totally.
Yeah.
Look out, Norton. The dais is chipping away.
There's a picture that's going around. It's Norm, Saget, Gilbert, and Jeff Ross. And everyone's like, look out, dude.
I think Kimmel actually had a pretty good joke where he said the lesson here is don't have dinner with Jeff Ross. I think the last clip I have, if we can skip ahead, is also Stern. So we might as well play that now since we're talking about him.
The real voice?
Yeah. So this was a thing that I found. I was lucky enough to sit in on the Kirk Minahan show, and Kirk had Gilbert on. And it's funny because you would hear Gilbert do this with a lot of the Zoom interviews that he did over the pandemic.
Yeah.
You would hear like real Gilbert for a second. where he's like, was this okay? You know, he's setting everything up. He's not in full character yet.
Are we rolling?
So yeah. So this was, I didn't hear it this extreme. So this is Gilbert leaving a voicemail for Baba Booey, confirming when he's going to be on the show.
Now listen to In Contrast. This is off the air Gilbert.
Oh.
This is Gilbert calling Gary from years ago on the answering machine.
Yes. Okay.
And this is Gilbert's real voice. All right, just as scary.
Yes.
All right, but it's like a whole different guy. All right, here it is.
Yeah, Gary, it's Gilbert. I'll probably be there tomorrow, but if you could call me up and just tell me what exactly is going on tomorrow, who's going to be there and everything like that.
That's the scariest Gilbert.
Wow.
People are afraid of the
serial killer.
Yeah, that's serial killer Gilbert. I mean, listen to it.
Bruce Dern. Hello, Gary.
And if worst comes to worst, if I could just call in. And, okay, I'll talk to you whenever.
Okay.
Yeah, bye-bye. Okay. Gilbert Manson.
That really sounds like he was a very quiet man.
Yeah.
He kept to himself. That doesn't sound like the same guy. Like
No,
you hear little glimpses of Gilbert, but that doesn't sound like the same guy. And then it's funny to hear Gilbert analyzing it. Like, yeah, he sounds like a psychopath.
Yeah, when you interviewed him, it was like that sort of, but you could still kind of hear the pitches.
Conversational Gilbert. And then the other funny thing, so Gilbert was I think that was him most of the time, like off stage. Everyone that I heard talk about him after he died basically said, he was a nervous, shy guy off stage, kind of kept to himself. And Norton would always talk about, he did Jim and Sam a lot the last few years.
Yeah.
And Jim Norton's favorite thing to do with him was just talk, because Norton's filthy sexually, and Gilbert loved the idea of Monster Rain and making Jim talk about Monster Rain. So Jim would talk about Monster Rain, but then he would ask Gilbert about his sexual exploits, and Gilbert would be like, "Oh, I don't know." He would get bashful, which is hilarious to see a guy as fucking filthy as Gilbert be like, "Ooh, I don't know if I'll go there."
I would never.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was. Honestly, it's very funny to hear that and then think of the fucking parrot in Iago.
I know, right?
In Aladdin, I mean.
He looks like a Japanese war criminal in that picture right there.
I didn't pop that up. I can pop it up for the people so they understand what you're talking about.
And by the way, for the people on social media that say you hear from sports, the Julie DeCaros of the world, where women's looks are criticized too much, go look through the history of Gilbert Gottfried roasts.
Oh my God.
He was not considered a handsome man.
No.
People mentioned it. So,
just a small Asian skeleton.
But I think one of the main things you forget about with Gilbert is that he was on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Nobody thinks of that.
No.
Because he did not have a particularly historic run.
No.
So he was basically one of the guys they brought in. Lorne Michaels left. And I forget the guy's name who ran it. He might mention it in this clip. I forget. But it was between Lorne Michaels and Dick Ebersol, whoever was running it at that time. And basically the Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd era, like the first cast, they were all gone. So this was a new cast they were bringing in. I think it was Eddie Murphy's first year. But other than that, there weren't a lot of stars in this lineup. But Gilbert was a guy they brought in and never really hit. Like he had, there was one recurring character he had. It was like a couple, like him and a wife had some recurring bit, but there was no, you couldn't point to, he basically had Pete Davidson's career, but was far less famous for it on SNL.
So he was on Weekend Update as himself.
Yeah, right. That actually would have been great. That's what they should have done in Gilbert.
I know.
Gilbert hosting Weekend Update.
That would have been great.
Yeah, that would have been phenomenal. But they just never found the right thing with him, which is why Stern was perfect for Gilbert, because Stern loved weirdos. Like Gilbert wasn't a whack packer; he was a professional comedian, but he was a weird guy that Howard could play with. And that's the type of world that guys like Gilbert were perfect for. And it's kind of symbolic that Gilbert really popped more in the 90s because we're going to talk about Tom Green in the next episode.
Yeah.
That era of just fucking wild, like MTV and Howard Stern, and where weirdness, Letterman was a big influence on this, where weirdness was accepted a lot more. And when Gilbert was on SNL, they weren't really ready for that. I don't think.
Yeah.
But
not even a little bit.
Yeah, 90s was Conan too, and he was
right.
fucking weird in the 90s too.
So this is Gilbert on Rogan, which, by the way, I love when guys like this do Rogan or some long form interview, because it's something you can point to. Like, you can go to through every Stern appearance and you're not going to get very much serious Gilbert.
Almost none.
Yeah. So it's nice when guys like him, or I'm trying to think of another example because Norm never did it, but guys like that, if they have a few long form interviews, it's nice to actually get their real side, which is him talking about Saturday Night Live.
God damn! Did you enjoy the process at all?
No, not really. And I was nothing new. I was always weird. When I was auditioning, there were a few auditions. Some at a comedy club, others in their office, and there would be like lots of people there. And I would hear, other people who auditioned who would say, oh, they were so hateful of everybody else who was against them in there. And I remember, just out of weirdness, not courage, out of weirdness, I didn't take auditioning for Saturday Night Live as something important. I don't know why. I just didn't. And I would go there and do bits and everything. And when I was on it, I didn't feel like, there was a reason I didn't feel like a star there, because everyone was torn to shreds in the press.
I think that's kind of the charm of Gilbert, though, because I can't imagine him giving a fuck about Saturday Night Live.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this isn't... Saturday Night Live was not what we know it as now, where it's this, institution. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's part of it. But, that's what people like about Gilbert and Norm and Artie Lang and that kind of crew of comedians, that they didn't give a fuck. And that's the beauty of Gilbert's career when you look through his, IMDb or whatever, where you're like, this guy didn't give a fuck? Wait a minute, how did he get in all? He's in these Disney movies, and he has all kinds of, he made a ton of money in voiceover work and commercials, and it's amazing, that attitude where he simply didn't give a fuck. I keep saying that, but he really did.
It's that voice. It brings you a long way. And I don't have the nuts to I keep wanting to try it, and I'm like, I'm not gonna.
I've barely done it a couple times if you've caught it, but I don't. I'm sure by the end of it I'll be. So he also talked about getting fired from SNL. His tenure was not very long there.
Oh, the way I got fired from Saturday Night Live. There used to be a table there that they would throw fan letters when there was a such thing as fan letters. Now it's, who writes a fan letter anymore? It's all, email and stuff. So I was waiting. They had fired the producer. And Dick Ebersol came in. He said, all right, well, we're just going to make changes here and there. Nothing major. Come in next week and we'll discuss it. And they were taking people in one by one. And I'm waiting there. And killing time, I see a girl writes a fan letter to me from Omaha or whatever. And I open it up. Before I even get into the office, I open the letter, and it starts off, Dear Gilbert, I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So I found out from a fan letter from some 15-year-old girl.
How did she find out?
Yeah, I don't know. But
maybe she saw it coming. Maybe she started writing it after the first episode. Yeah. Oh, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah. This guy sucks.
This guy sucks. I like the idea of Gilbert groupies.
I know.
Young girls like, Gilbert, we love you.
They all look like Rhea Perlman.
But that is, But that is probably, if some tabloid in, wherever, fucking Washington wrote SNL is going to fire Gilbert Gottfried, back in the day, that wouldn't have gotten back to Gilbert. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like if it's being reported somewhere, it's not like now with Twitter and everything.
Yeah.
Like that might legitimately get into the press before it gets into the head of Gilbert Gottfried, which is wild. But yeah, we always talk about kind of revisionist history, like what should people have done in their career, what we wish they did, blah, blah, blah. But I'm kind of glad Gilbert wasn't a staple on SNL because I think he could have fit, like we just said, on Weekend Update. If he had was a correspondent on Weekend Update or whatever, that would have been great. But I don't know that would be necessarily the right, like I almost would have preferred Gilbert have his own sketch show. You know what I mean? Like where he's not confined to what would fit SNL. Like I don't think if they ever did find a character, I don't think we'd have the same Gilbert. Does that make sense?
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. And like he keeps talking about how he's so weird. Like they probably never let him write his own characters.
Right.
On SNL.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like Gilbert writing his own characters?
I mean, if they kept him for another couple of years, him doing Seinfeld would be hilarious.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because someone ended up doing Seinfeld on SNL, didn't they?
Fallon did.
Sure.
Oh, it was Fallon.
There's Fallon. Seinfeld was on like Weekend Update, and it was pretty funny just because Fallon's doing the Seinfeld impression. And Jerry like plays into it and just goes, I don't talk like that. And Fallon goes, you do. You talk exactly like this. But I don't know. Seinfeld doesn't seem like the kind of guy that I don't know if he loved Gilbert's like impression. Did he ever do Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, Gilbert?
I don't know. I can look that up though.
Yeah, I should have watched that. If he did, he must have. But where are we, Craig? I'm sorry. Well, I lost my train of thought here.
Affleck.
What's the next clip? Oh, we're there already. My God.
Yeah. What's the fourth thing?
Yeah. So Gilbert's been fired from a lot. We just talked about him getting fired from SNL. Probably his biggest firing and, the start of, quote, cancel culture, I guess, was Gilbert getting fired from Affleck. Mm-hmm. He was the Affleck duck, as you may remember. Let's hear him talk about it, and then we'll talk more about it.
Now, at the time, do you realize that Affleck does 75% of their business in Japan?
I found that out soon enough. Oh, yeah.
This clip is great,
I done found that out.
So the Twitter account, @RealGilbert, oh, believe me, he makes it clear, too. Oh, it's real. Not even Joe Schmo. I'm going to have fun on this. It's me, Real Gilbert. He writes, okay. Japan is really advanced. They don't go to the beach comes to them. What do the Japanese have in common with Howard Stern? They're both radioactive. What does every Japanese person have in their apartment? Floodlights. I just split up with my girlfriend, but like the Japanese say, there'll be another one floating by any minute now. I do remember he was tweeting so much, my lights started dimming. Yeah.
See, but you notice when you were reading the tsunami jokes, everybody here was laughing.
Yes, that's true.
And see, that's the thing.
That's what matters. You know what else?
Right, yeah.
None of us were getting $1 million.
Yeah.
And also, we waited a good 48 hours after.
Oh, yeah. Well, that always got me when they say too soon.
Why is it okay later?
Yeah, because it's like you can make a joke about the Titanic now.
Right.
And it's like, I'm thinking, so if you make a joke about the Titanic now and you're a good person because you didn't do it back then you're saying, okay, I waited. Fuck those people who died on the Titanic.
It's so true. So first of all, if I don't know if they exactly said it in there, but if you don't remember the tsunami that happened and decimated Japan, and Gilbert was tweeting all those jokes the minute that happened.
He was real time joking.
They were still draining people's basements.
Yeah. So obviously a little insensitive, I suppose. That would get him crucified now, by the way. He would have more than lost his job, I think.
Oh yeah.
But it's interesting to hear him talk like that because I think we kind of talked about this in the first episode when we talked about Dice. Gilbert is kind of playing a character in the same way that Dice was, I guess. So it's interesting to hear his perspective on that because you just think of him as a clown, as a wacky, set up punch guy. But there is a lot of thought that goes into that where he's like, well, fuck too soon. I'm going to do this. He's not just being silly. He's doing that for a reason.
There's a reason.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of like Ari Shaffir always says where he's like, oh, no. us joking about tragedies proves that we care about those things.
Yeah.
It proves that we realize those are horrible things, and then we try to find humor in them. We'd be psychotic if we thought that it was hilarious that people are getting wiped away in a flood. Like, that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
But Gilbert looks at it and says, well, there's people that, will laugh at this. So in a time of fucking horror, it's nice to make people laugh.
It makes it less horrible.
Right.
It's just just a little bit.
But it was funny that they had, I think we were blocking most of it on the version people are going to see, but just the footage of the flood while they're reading.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, that clip you pulled was amazing because as they're talking about it, they're just in the bottom left corner, they're playing footage of like buildings being swept away by the ocean.
Gilbert,
and he's laughing at the top.
Unfortunately, when I show the clips on this, we're on the bottom left corner.
But yeah, it's interesting to hear Gilbert talk like that because it shows like, people that make those jokes do probably care more than the people that are getting offended by the jokes.
Easily.
So what's the next clip? I forget what order we're going in here. For some
this
reason.
is Gilbert and Norm.
Oh yeah, I always try to include a Norm clip. So like I said, we'll talk more about the 9/11 joke. We have a clip where he's kind of talking about the aftermath of it. But I figured we have to include at least one 9/11 joke. So here's Gilbert on the greatest talk show of all time, Norm Macdonald Live.
Yes.
I'm old enough to remember back to simpler, more innocent times when the worst thing you'd hear about the news was hijacked jetliners flying into buildings.
Oh, no, Gilbert, you're going to get in trouble again.
Norm just saying you're going to get in trouble again. as Gilbert's reading the joke that Norm wrote for him.
No, it's Adam Egget.
Adam said that?
When they're that brutal, Norm usually puts the blame on.
Oh, right, yeah. Holocaust denier. But Norm and Gilbert were unbelievable together. I didn't want to make it into a Norm thing, so I didn't include too much from that interview.
That should be the through line for this show: is that as much Norm as possible.
I think we mentioned Norm in every episode, or at least I've tried to. I mean, it was probably tough to work him into the Lenny Bruce episode.
Or Hartman.
Phil
Hartman, maybe.
Yeah, right. Well, no, because they were on SNL at the same time. I'm sure we mentioned them.
We probably did.
We definitely did.
So, like that's what you want from Norm Macdonald. I mean, from Gilbert Gottfried. Like I said, that's where I saw him, and it's fun. Like if most people, if I went to see fucking Tim Dillon and he's telling a joke about a Polish construction worker, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? when you see Gilbert, you want those kind of old school type of. Not vaudeville, that's probably Catskills is what I'm looking for. Like those Catskills type of humor with a really fucking, deranged twist on it.
Take my wife, please, and murder her.
Right, exactly.
Please.
That was such a great joke, though. I think that the actual joke kind of got lost us laughing at it.
Yeah. And the beauty is it making Gilbert laugh halfway through.
Yes, it was.
Halfway through reading it.
I forgot I said that.
Seeing him break was one of the best things ever. I agree.
So I mentioned, revisionist history a minute ago. Is there anything you guys can think of that you would have liked to seen Gilbert do or, get the opportunity to be part of?
Yeah, as soon as you said Weekend Update, I was like, oh my God, him screaming the news at us would have been one of the best things ever.
Probably more specials.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, he has a special on Hulu, I want to say.
You know what it is though? Well, or a place people can see it.
What's up?
Most people have Netflix and stuff. One that just give him one.
Right, yeah.
But when you look back, you're like, oh man, this guy's so funny. And you see everyone that would put the special on, hearing him talk about Bob Saget raping and murdering a girl. They're probably like, yeah, we'll hold off.
Wait a minute.
And we talked about this in the Saget episode, but that genuinely hurt Bob Saget. Not the joke.
Yeah.
He loved the joke.
Yeah.
But then people would go after him and be like, Bob Saget, you're a rapist. Gilbert Gottfried said it. It must be true.
That made news stories when he died.
Yeah.
Which was what, 2 minutes ago?
Right.
Bob Saget died?
Right.
I know.
They're all just dying right off.
Right. But as I'm saying that, more roasts would have been great too. He was unbelievable on those roasts.
Well, it's because he was such a good joke writer.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. He was made for that, honestly.
You can see who writes their own stuff on those things.
Absolutely.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I don't think Martha Stewart's really.
You don't think so? Her and fucking Snoop Dogg, Mike Tyson.
I'll bite your ears off.
All right.
She's like, my pussy smells.
I think that's Gilbert's joke, actually.
Somebody cut that, please.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think. Like, I can't imagine what. Like, I think he was a pretty good actor. You know what I mean? Like I looked up like sketches of him and everything. He is a good actor, but I cannot imagine him. And maybe that's the small-minded thinking that like executives have also, where he didn't get this opportunity. But I can't really imagine him like starring. What would be his role in a sitcom or a TV show or something? But I do think it would have been interesting. Just seeing that, like if he got a pilot or something.
He's got Wacky Neighbor written all over him.
Yeah,
right. That's what I meant to mention. Actually, that's perfect, Craig. Where like. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say he's Patton Oswalt in the basement.
Right.
Or,
Jerry Stiller. Yeah. Where, that is the perfect kind of role for him. And I'm surprised he didn't play, fucking whoever's, Joey's dad on Friends or something. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of something. But like,
imagine
you know what I mean?
Him as like Wilson on Tool Time. I mean, Home Improvement.
You'd have to have a really low fence.
Who is that? The mystery. Who does that voice belong to?
That would be great. Doesn't that guy sell me insurance?
but you know what I mean? Like a character that had, you can guarantee he's in like 6 episodes a season or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he didn't play the uncle that drops by. You're right. Like where that would have suited him perfectly. Wacky Neighbor or whatever. I'm surprised he wasn't used more in that type of role, considering, the kind of foot in the door he had with Hollywood, where he was not, as much as he was a weird guy, he was not completely shunned. And that's why I don't get the Howard shunning of Gilbert. Like, I guess it's because he's too vulgar and crass. Like he would make jokes that don't fit Howard's image now. But Gilbert was accepted by Hollywood. Like if you want to go by this narrative that Howard wants to be accepted, Gilbert was accepted. You know what I mean? You can have Sarah Silverman on to talk about her pussy. Why can't you have Gilbert on to do the same?
To talk about her pussy.
Yeah, right.
Talk about hers. Yeah.
Should we get into the 9/11 stuff? Or because we do have one clip about it.
I mean, we pushed over the first domino.
Yeah, right. So basically, the joke was, if you don't remember, Gilbert was on the Hugh Hefner roast, and this was, I want to say 2 weeks, but no, it might have been days after 9/11. Mm-hmm. The Hugh Hefner roast, they were like, you know what, fuck it, let's do it. People need to laugh, I guess. So Gilbert says, I don't have a lot of time. I have a flight to catch. It's a connecting flight. We have to stop off at the Empire State Building first. And it got quite a few groans in the audience, and it was cut from the roast. And then he, jumped from that. He jumped into the Aristocrats joke. So like I said, they fuck up the clip online. It's very annoying. It would be a hell of a lot better than me telling it. But he talks about it with Seth Meyers here.
Oh, what was this one labeled as?
Not this one.
I'm sorry. It's not labeled 9/11. It was labeled...
My favorite Gilbert joke?
Nope. Give me another one.
People want to laugh?
Yes.
Yeah.
People want to laugh. On it, boss.
Oh, yeah. All right. I actually remember this.
Well, he got a ton of shit for it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I actually remember seeing this.
I mean, it was part of a documentary, which is what they're talking about. It was part of a documentary where they and kind of in the scene, and like I said, the tone of the music is like, my God, the worst thing to happen to America that month was Gilbert's joke.
One was you told a 9/11 joke right after 9/11 at a Hugh Hefner roast.
Yeah, it was like a couple of days after September 11th. People were booing and hissing. One guy yelled out too soon, which I thought meant I didn't take a long enough pause between the setup and the punchline.
Joke mechanic joke.
And then I figure, why not go to the bottom level of hell? And I go in, I tell the Aristocrats.
Now, this is funny because we're talking about one documentary, but the telling of the Aristocrats joke led to a different documentary about the history of the joke. And that was sort of a filthy joke. Yeah. And it sort of you won the room back.
It showed like in situations like that, people need to laugh. They really want to laugh. In the documentary, there's a part where I'm doing a benefit at St. Jude's Hospital, which is by no stretch a funny place.
Of course not.
It's like a children's hospital. And I went up, I thought for sure this would destroy what I had of a career. And people were, it did great because people desperately want to laugh.
And
the kids at the children's hospital loving Gilbert.
I love the reassurance.
A fun image. It was a children's hospital.
It was not a funny place.
It's a real hoot, I imagine, at the cancer ward. But yeah, that's why I love clips like that, just because it does show. It's amazing, like tomorrow, a movie could be released where Leo is playing a firefighter on 9/11 that is literally dragging bodies out of the fucking rubble, and they'll show people jumping from the towers and shit like that, and they'll make you watch that. And you'll be like, my God, what a brilliant performance. And Gilbert makes, a silly goof about it. And people are like, get the fuck out of here, you cretin. Beat it. Yeah. So it's amazing, like, the disrespect. I mean, that's what this podcast is basically for.
Yeah.
Kind of exposing the disrespect, like the lack of respect that's out there for comedy, where it should be uplifted more, because they're doing shit for people that are in a painful time.
Exactly.
Literally, like Gilbert is visiting kids in a children's hospital, trying to bring a few yucks.
Right. That's exactly what he said. Everybody wants to laugh, but nobody wants to admit what they laugh at.
Right. Yeah. It's airing their dirty laundry, I guess, which is why, I think it's a bit of a shame. Like I said, Gilbert was right on the cusp of like when, society just started to break out and you could have things on the fringes a little more. But I do wish he was more, what's the word I'm looking for? I kind of wish he was breaking in like the internet age a little more.
Yeah.
Where he could be appreciated even more than he was. Because like I said, the only outlet that would consistently have him on was Stern back in the day to be who he really was. You know what I mean? And then now later, like I said, he's been on Jim and Sam and a million podcasts. And he had his podcast, which was essentially, I hadn't thought about it like this because I didn't listen to Gilbert's amazing Colossal podcast too often anyways. But in a way, I kind of ripped that off without knowing it, because that was essentially like, why are you laughing for like old TV? Like Gilbert was just a guy that loved like old television and would break that down endlessly. And like to most people, they'd be like, oh, that's fucking boring. I don't have any interest in that. But he was appealing to the niche that liked what Gilbert likes, basically. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I always respected that about him. And I'm now realizing that I probably stole that from him in some way. What's
Parallel
next?
thinking.
Wife swap?
Next? Oh, so this is great. So this is, again, Gilbert flourishing in redundancy, as I said before, where, for those of you that don't know, the great Alan Thicke had a program called In the Thick of the Night. It was a late night talk show that went up against Johnny Carson. Oof. And spoiler alert.
Lost?
Didn't last for long. Carson came out the victor in that battle.
I would say, yeah.
But one of the guys Alan Thicke would have on a lot was Gilbert Gottfried. Mm-hmm. And so on the show, years later, on the show Celebrity Wife Swap, which was basically, the husband goes to live with the opposite family for, a week or whatever, and wackiness ensues.
Great Chappelle Show sketch.
That's right, yeah. I think Gilbert is the most brilliant choice they could have made for that. Imagine you're living with your family and just Gilbert Gottfried is dad one day.
in his too big suit.
That's a sitcom. Gilbert Gottfried just shows up.
It's called Stepdad.
So Gilbert Gottfried and Alan Thicke switch places. And I'll tell you my favorite part of this clip right after we play it. But this is Alan Thicke's wife interacting with Gilbert.
I think Gilbert's impression of Alan is quite terrible and completely off.
Second verse. I
think I get it, Gilbert. He would not stop singing that song. I think he thinks it's really funny, but you don't want to test my patience. I'm going to give you a French slap in about 1 second.
Sounds good.
Ooh, look out for her. I always hate the tough guy. Like, you don't want to joke with me, Buster. It's like, shut up, lady. One of the greats is your home.
She's literally a foot and a half taller than
One of the greats is in your kitchen doing a bit in front of you just for you.
A little fucking respect. So my favorite part of that clip, I don't know if you caught it, when they show Gilbert singing the Alan Thicke song, doing the impression, he says, second verse. So I've heard Gilbert tell the story of that appearance. He sang the entire song over and over to her just to annoy her. And that is what I mean when I say flourishing and redundancy.
That's fucking great.
But that is one of the things I love about Gilbert too, is like his impressions. No one was confused. No one's like, oh, is Alan Thicke in the room? And that's what that lady wasn't getting, is it's just hilarious to pick on something, like the same thing with Seinfeld, where he picked on that little, like, why? He kind of picked on Alan Thicke's, like, sing-songy, mumbling sort of thing. And just, brings that to the nth degree.
Well, and too, that he was like, if I get slapped, this is great television.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Oh, Gilbert would think it was hilarious. It sounds good.
Okay, please do. Now,
he was a rare comedy first guy, which is very much a dying breed now.
Absolutely,
because even I think even if you look at some of our favorite comedians, except for probably Tim Dillon and Shane Gillis and guys like that, select few. I think most people now, even like the silly ones, if they were kind of put to the test, they would want to get serious. You know what I mean? Or they feel bad about making some political joke that bothers people. Gilbert never gave a fuck about that. Whether it was, pissing off an entire nation in Japan or bothering Alan Thicke's wife to her face. He truly didn't give a fuck.
That's fucking funny. That's great.
What's next?
Gilbert's documentary.
Yeah, so one of the things Gilbert became known for, almost to the point where it became like, he got mentioned to him all constantly. Once his documentary came out, was that he would basically steal. He was a very cheap guy, not to play on too many stereotypes, but Gilbert fit that apparently, because he would like steal, and he would they would always talk about like when he was at craft services. He'd take a muffin and put it in his pocket for later. shit like that.
Gross.
But in the documentary, we would wrap it in a napkin. Let's not get crazy here. But in the documentary, they would talk about the amount of, so he basically had what Darren Ravel has in Black People memorabilia, where there's like a room in his house for it. Yeah. Gilbert had that in little shampoo bottles.
Oh, yeah, right.
So they talk about that a little on Jim and Sam, and Jim Norton brings up a funny story.
Watching the documentary, to me, it's like, that first time you hear yourself recorded or you see yourself and you go, oh, God, that's not me.
Pause 1 second.
Yeah. And that's like...
We all kind of have that moment, like the first time you hear your voice on like the voicemail or something.
Yep.
Imagine if you're Gilbert Gottfried and you're hearing that for the first time.
Horrifying.
like the go-to reference of brutal voices.
Oh, that would be terrible.
Continue.
Or you see yourself and you go, oh, God, that's not me.
Yeah.
And that's like watching the documentary.
Well, do you still save all those like shampoos and stuff?
Yes.
Do you use them?
Yes. Yeah, I use them.
I love that he goes, he watches the documentary. He goes, no, that's not me. And then he continues to do everything he did in the documentary. Like, he doesn't stop a thing.
Yeah, I don't stop it, but I just go. And watching myself, I felt like I thought I walked like Red Fox in Sanford.
Gilbert's the only guy who gets wanded leaving the show.
Entering.
Have you ever been caught stealing anything embarrassing from a
Yes,
venue?
he has. At Artie Lang's show.
What happened?
I forget what they call you taking. It was like a coffee maker. Nick DiPaolo and Artie had the show on DirecTV.
Right.
From the green room. They were like, yeah, Gilbert was here. He took the coffee maker. They had to make him, like, they caught him.
Did you steal Nick DiPaolo and Artie Lang's coffee maker?
The best part of that is later he's like, I don't think maybe a bag of coffee beans. It has to fit under my shirt. But I love the idea of Nick DiPaolo and Artie Lang going to make a cup of coffee at the end of a show. Which, by the way, might have to talk about Nick and Artie at some point. Like they had a weird fallout. Like they had a great radio show. Yeah, and had kind of a weird fallout. I don't know if it's episode worthy, but we'll mention it at some point. I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But just the idea of fucking angry Nick DiPaolo. Where the fuck's the coffee maker?
Who's got the Keurig?
Gilbert's running away with it.
Did that fucking weirdo take the coffee maker?
But I do love that. Just the idea of this old Jewish man, again, to the point of not giving a fuck, that he's playing into every stereotype that there's ever been by, stealing food from craft services or coffee makers from the Nick and Artie show.
I just enjoy how much joy Norton took in going, yes, he did.
Yes,
yeah, I know.
And what I love about Gilbert is he's laughing like, did I do that?
He caught me.
Not even quite sure. What's the next clip we get?
Hitler's grandson.
Yes, so as you can probably imagine, we were going to get to Hitler at some point in this episode.
Naturally.
But this is an amazing joke. I think I have a couple in a row that are just classic Gilbert Gottfried jokes.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting angle, like Gilbert... I kind of said a bit of a twist on a Catskills comedian, but he did have an interesting look at a lot of things.
I read somewhere that Hitler had a grandson who was a convicted child molester. Imagine being the embarrassment to the Hitler family. Is there anything worse than being the Hitler who the other Hitlers don't talk about?
I think another clear influence, and I think I mentioned this before, but shame on us for not talking about this in the Rodney Dangerfield episode.
Yeah.
But Rodney, when he was not on The Tonight Show, like if you just go see Rodney's act, at times he was a lot dirtier than he was. So people were kind of shocked by that. And I think probably what you heard was very similar to like Gilbert's style, where he has that kind of setup punch, but like with a twist to what Rodney would do on The Tonight Show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that's just a fucking... imagine being the embarrassment to the Hitler name.
It's a great line.
The way he wrote it, though, like Hitler's is a really funny fucking just term.
Right. Yeah, right.
Like,
multiples.
Yeah, it's like the
Hitlers shaking their head in disgust. So, that's one thing I do think would have been interesting because Gilbert had a lot of great stories. I always wonder about that. We talked about that with Mitch Hedberg, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder how he would have been if you forced him to be a storytelling comedian for one special. You know what I mean? Because he was great at telling stories, but how would that have been on stage? I'm kind of glad he didn't do it because I like Gilbert's style, and I don't think there's enough of that now.
Yeah,
but,
please don't change Gilbert.
Yeah, well, he won't now.
Well,
so that's for sure.
No danger of that.
Yeah, he's in the clear.
Something happened to him?
I didn't even know he was sick, as Norm would say. So my favorite joke, I don't think needs any setup. Mm-hmm. This is just a very sad story that Gilbert is telling.
A woman gets into a really bad car accident. The man rushes from work over to the hospital. The doctor comes out. He goes, sorry, it's really bad news. Your wife was in a horrible car accident. Her face and body are totally mangled. She'll be crippled and paralyzed from the neck down. She's going to need a 24-hour care, of which your insurance is not going to pay for. You're going to have to wash her and feed her and keep turning her over in case she gets bed sores and rubbing ointment on her, and you'll have to change her pretty constantly because she'll have no control over her bladder or bowels. And the man breaks down crying, and the doctor goes, I'm just fucking with you. She's dead.
So brilliant because that is like it's just picking up on the thought that would be in the back of everyone's mind, like fuck if that happened to you, and no one would want to say that, but that's like just such a brilliant fucking joke.
So brutal.
But so we talked about this in the Mitch Hedberg episode, and I didn't do a good job. It took me like 40 minutes to get to the point I was trying to make, to the point where Carl thought I was like shitting on Mitch Hedberg. And I was not trying to do, but going through a lot of these Gilbert clips made me realize the point that I was trying to make. So when I saw Gilbert live, he told a lot of jokes where I genuinely wasn't sure if he was telling street jokes. And this is true of his Hulu special too, where there's jokes in there where you're like, wait a minute, is that a street joke, or is that a joke that Gilbert wrote that just became a street joke? And you genuinely couldn't tell. So I think that's what I was trying to say about Hedberg, where he was almost hurt by his own brilliance. Right. And I think Gilbert kind of suffers from the same thing, where his jokes are so good and so universally applicable in certain situations, where people repeat them and you don't even know it's a Gilbert joke.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that, I'm sure people have used shit like that before.
Oh, yeah.
Just, dads and uncles around the country, and not even realize they were repeating a Gilbert joke,
Yeah. Exactly.
Do we have any more clips?
Just Carlin was a fan. That's it.
So this was really interesting. I was glad to see, because like I said, I don't know. I was never quite sure that Gilbert got like the respect in comedy that he deserved, because he was a punchline in so many scenarios where, like I said, anytime you're talking about a brutal voice, you would reference Gilbert Gottfried. So, he was used like as a punchline. So I never knew like what the level of respect, obviously guys that knew him, Norton and Artie Lang obviously have a great deal of respect, and Norm and Saget and guys like that. Mm-hmm. But I always wondered, like, universally, in comedy, what was the respect that Gilbert Gottfried had? And this is him on Rogan indicating that, I think.
One time I was getting on a plane, and a few miles down from me, I saw George Carlin. And, he was a few miles ahead of me. And I'd never met him before, so I didn't want to bother him. And I sat down, and then he gets up from his chair, and he looks at me and is walking toward me, and I got so excited. I thought, George Carlin, he wants to talk to me. And he comes over to me and he says, I got to work on some stuff. I'm writing. I got to read something, and then I'm going to take a nap so I can talk to you. And it was like basically he went out of his way to tell me to go fuck myself.
Wasn't he just being courteous? Because otherwise he would have said, I would talk to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when it was getting near the end of the flight, when they announced that we're going to be descending soon, he came over to me again, and he scribbled his phone number down on a piece of paper, and he said to me, next time you're appearing on TV, I want you to call me and tell me, because I want to see what's going on in that brain of yours.
I thought that was great. Like, I thought that was a really cool story. Just the idea that Carlin was like fascinated by a guy like Gilbert.
What weird move though, to go be like, I can't talk to you. Yeah. And he didn't even approach him.
Yeah. So later in that same clip from Rogan, he goes on to talk about, he also got Jonathan Winter's phone number and never used it either. And what I respect most about Gilbert kind of lies in this story, where Rogan asked him, like, why wouldn't you, these guys gave you your number. Obviously they wanted to talk to you in some way. And he's just a nervous, awkward guy who doesn't want to bother people.
Yeah.
And I think I suffer from a lot of that myself. So I think what I admire most about Gilbert, and it's something that I certainly don't have, is his ability to break out of that and become Gilbert Gottfried.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when you're watching the guy on stage, you don't think, oh, this is a guy who would be uncomfortable at a party or something, But he is. Like he's a guy uncomfortable in his own skin, very shy, very weird. And yet he's able to break that and drop it for the sake of performing,
Yeah, I think he definitely strikes me as a nervous party goer.
Oh yeah. But you know what I'm just talking about, like his loud, bombastic.
Oh, he
personality.
speaks with such confidence.
Yeah, where you wouldn't think like, oh, this is a guy that won't make eye contact with you and is afraid to talk to you.
He also does the jokes that I'm like, I would never have the balls to even speak that out loud.
No, he's the greatest. And to kind of go back where we started, like it's amazing, and it will never happen again.
Nope.
That you have a guy like Gilbert Gottfried, who is able to tell the Aristocrats joke and also be in children's cartoons.
I know.
That will never happen again. So he's literally the last of a dying breed, and it's very sad. And maybe that's not true. Maybe the more, we as a society kind of eulogize people like Norm and Gilbert and kind of lose that, maybe the next generation will see a void there, and you'll get more people like that. I hope, in a dream world, I hope that happens. But at least as of now, you'll never see another Gilbert Gottfried. I don't think.
Never.
I could see Mark Norman doing something like that. Maybe,
definitely influenced by it. But I guess I'm just saying, like, there's not a kind of like when we talk about, cancel culture and shit like that. Like, I feel like an asshole even saying that now because it's become so overdone. But it is a thing that exists.
Yeah.
And it's the problem with it, as I always said, was not that this guy. Not that Gilbert lost a job with Affleck. It's that the next guy who wants to become Gilbert Gottfried won't even attempt that joke,
right?
Because they're terrified of ruining their life. So that's the real shame of it all. And Gilbert did not give a fuck about that. And I think we could use more of that just in life, not just comedy, but everywhere.
Agreed.
Yes. Yeah. Anything else, boys, about the great Gilbert Gottfried?
No, I was thinking like coaching trees. Like you can draw a direct line from him to like Anthony Jeselnik. And like
Jeselnik,
Tosh.
Norman, you said it for sure.
Tosh.
That's a good one. And Daniel Tosh is a weird guy. Off stage, you might be like Gilbert too, because he's a weird guy you never fucking hear from.
He's never done an interview. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's coming to Boston at some point, like this summer. So I think he's going back out on tour. But he doesn't do anything.
No.
But yeah, for sure. And he's a great comic. And for sure there's Gilbert influence.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other guys that kind of come from that school. But I do think Tosh was a great example. And I think Norman might be the best example of a guy that could be like the next kind of Gilbert Gottfried, where even like he's weird and like he'll do local news interviews and I'm gay and just weird shit like that. So I think he's the best. I'm trying to think of another example of a young guy because, like I said, not many people are gonna be like that or even attempt to be like that.
No, because you're right. I mean, if you're gonna tell those kind of jokes, like we talking about, like Shane Gillis and those kind of guys, like they embrace the fact that like. Now that I've lost SNL, fuck everybody.
This is what I am now.
This is who I am now.
And that's where like Skankfest comes from, was basically Louis J. Gomez saying, I have to be this. I'm never going to audition for, I think he said he auditioned for like Crashing.
Yeah.
And Pete Holmes wrote a character for him named Lewis and he didn't get it. and so Lewis said like, I need to create a world where I can be successful. Yeah. Gilbert was amazingly able to break through that. And I hope more people kind of realize that and stick to it. But rest in peace, Gilbert Gottfried, one of the greats. Go check out his special. Go check out him on Norm. He was one of the best ever. Like I said, I didn't pull a ton of Stern clips because I think a lot of people did that. But you can go down a rabbit hole of Stern on Gilbert,
For sure.
Gilbert, fucking with Beetlejuice and like, some of the truly great Gilbert moments on that show, or even just him sitting on the news was hilarious. Gilbert, we miss you, buddy, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Subscribe to the Patreon. Gilbert would have wanted it that way.
That's true.
Go to patreon.com/blindmike. You get these episodes a week early. You can also listen to these boys on Very Good Show.
Yeah. When's this coming out, you think?
Next week.
So keep an ie out for our own Patreon.
Whoa, is that official?
Boom. Yeah, I think so.
Folks, if you have enough to subscribe to every goddamn Patreon, if you've subscribed to every other Patreon, it's gonna I need one more to fill out the roster.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll just see what happens. Even if like 5 people subscribe, I don't give a shit. Patreon.com/verygoodshow.
Go support the boys. And if you guys subscribe, I don't have to pay them. So look at it that way. You're helping me out.
You're helping Mike out in the long run,
so check out all the Patreons. And for a free way to support the show, like I said, like us on YouTube, comment, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, all that shit helps. It's a free way to support the show.
And Average Nobody's podcast as well.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Vaulted Podcast Studios. Like I said, we're not there this week, which is why it probably doesn't sound as good.
Yeah, that sounds better.
we need the great Matt from Rhode Island, and if you want your podcast to sound like that, like it usually does, then go to hit up Matt from RI on Twitter, and go to Vaulted Podcast. You can record your stuff there.
This wrap up was a jumbled mess.
It really was. Like I said, it's the way Gilbert would have wanted it.
Exactly.
Goodbye, everybody. Every time we do one of these episodes, we leave, and I think, fuck, I forgot to mention this. So we didn't do it this time. I said, no. Let's get back in there and record this. I forgot the Hollywood Squares episode. I can't believe I didn't think of this when we were talking about all Gilbert's firings. Yes. He got fired for this. I didn't realize that. So a clip that was very popularly going around when Gilbert passed was him on Hollywood Squares. So evidently, Penn Jillette said, gave an answer, and the person disagreed with him. I don't really even know how Hollywood Squares works. Mm-hmm. He X'd instead of O'd or something. Yeah. And he got it wrong. He should have listened to Penn Jillette, and Penn Jillette said, "You fool." And so Gilbert took that and ran with it in this clip that resulted in his firing from Hollywood Squares.
Gilbert Gottfried. Gilbert Gottfried.
You're so popular.
All right, Gilbert. Here we go. This happened first season too, didn't it? Yeah. When she heard that Phileas Fogg had done it in 80 days, journalist Nellie Bly beat him by doing it in 72 days. What did she do?
Get through to the cable company.
Very 90s.
No, I know this. Trust me.
Trust me.
Judy Gold.
This is Rowing the Atlantic.
I'm agreed.
You fool!
She went around the world in 72 days. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the Gilbert Gottfried Show.
Gilbert Gottfried!
So this is, by the way, they need Gilbert.
He's the last square.
They need Gilbert. He's the last square. They need him to win the game. So what's happening here is they have to call on Gilbert, and he keeps fucking with them. And this took, this is a 2-minute clip, but it made them, this game took the entire episode. Usually they play a couple rounds or whatever they do. This took the entire episode, so it fucked everything up for them. And Gilbert just did not care and kept going.
Its French designer named it the Atom because of its small size and the explosive effect a woman would have when she wore it. Today it's better known as...
It's in my pants!
But your thumb's covering it.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
In fact, it's covering it right now. The tube top.
I agree.
You fool!
Look at all these people laughing. Everyone's laughing. Let's fire them.
It's the bikini. It's the bikini. So, David, back to you. Gilbert Gottfried.
They keep doing the fancy thing, too.
Gilbert, what significance does 1908 have if you were a Chicago Cubs fan?
That's the year you were in Chicago. Okay, it's the last perfect pitch game.
I'm gonna agree.
Oh, you idiot. Now I'm getting into it. I'm like, no.
It's the last time they won a World Series, I think.
Yeah. So that clip was going around the day he died. I'm sure you guys probably saw it, but when I learned that he got canned for that because he fucked everything up, I figured we had to tell that story.
It was the best time anyone's ever had on that show.
It was the greatest, and it became like the You Fool episode. People knew it as that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I guess, production-wise, it fucked things up. I don't know. But again... that goes back to Gilbert just not giving a fuck. He'd rather have fun and, risk losing his job. And I'm sure that hurt him financially and everything. It probably sucked, but he would have laughed about it. That's the brilliance of the guy.
Right.
So that's it. All right. Now, we'll see you for real next week.